This community of care is created through our work and our time together, our commitment to one another. This is our covenant, to walk together in loving fellowship, to share our hopes and values. As we pass these baskets, we thank you for your generous gifts, which support the work of this religious community and Unitarian Universalism in the world at large. As a reflection of our values, we are pleased to participate in the Change for Change program. The coins you place in the basket today will support the work of nonprofits in and around the Grand Valley. With gratitude, we will now receive today's offering. This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. So you contribute to its life. We affirm our lives within it. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. Please stand in body or spirit and join together to sing hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth, in our gray hymnal. Let us now welcome Wendy Vitalock. I'm sorry, Wendy, who is the poet laureate of the Western Slope, as she speaks on the spiritual art of language.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for the wonderful words. What a joy to be here with you all. I'll start with the shortest poem ever written in the English language, we think. It's 3 words, and that's including the title. And it's by a gentleman named Gerald Strickland, and it was written around the turn of the century. 3 words. The title is Fleas. Adam had 'em. So I've been all over the Western Slope in the last year talking about language. And I used to say that a poet is a person who has an extreme sensitivity to language. And I have revised that to say that we all have an extreme sensitivity to language. It's something we all share. A couple of the things that I've been talking about have to do with learning and conditioning and the difference between the two. And one of the things that we were conditioned to very young in our culture was this idea that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Made no sense to me as a child, and yet I heard it over and over again and thought there must be something wrong with me because words were hurting me regularly. Another one that I think we were all conditioned to sort of buy into is this idea that practice makes perfect. I don't know anybody who's perfect, do you? In the Hopi tradition, when they weave a basket, they intentionally put a little flaw in it. And they call it the spiritual flaw. And it's because they want to be really aware every day and every moment that there is no such thing as perfection. So I think of language as this invisible influence. And it really is a teacher. Language is teaching us all of the time. When I was here several years ago, I spoke about courage and mentioned that this word courage is really interesting because it comes from the root, the Latin, the word cor, or car, cardiac, of the heart. So we think of courage as something you have to go out onto the battlefield to exhibit. No. Courage, the word came from speaking from the heart. That's what the word courage meant. This is how culture changes words to suit our fancy. We want to make war look really fun and cool, and you get to have courage out on the battlefield. So we took that away from the heart. But I'm here to remind you that. So we come back to these words and we say, words are here to teach us. They really are these sort of invisible, sort of guiding stars in our lives. Another really interesting word is vulnerable. One of the things I was taught, and I'm sure many of you were taught, is never, ever show weakness. Don't be vulnerable, right? Well, the word vulnerable comes from the Greek vulni, which means to carry a wound gracefully. The word assumes that we've all been hurt. It's how we carry that wound. So vulnerable is another really fascinating kind of teacher. Then there's the word inspiration or inspire. This word comes from the Latin divine breath, inspire. There's inspire, expire. Inspire is the divine breath within you. So as a perennial student of the world and a lifelong learner, I've noticed in recent years that more and more people are coming to poetry events and open mics and storytelling events. And there could be many reasons for this, but in large part, it seems to me that people are turning to poetry and a deeper understanding of language in search of meaning. People are seeking meaning. This is kind of universal, right? Poetry, of course, if anything, is an appeal to slow down. We often think that our fast-paced lifestyle is something new to us, to our generation, to our time. But actually, the poets have been asking us to slow down for thousands of years. Poetry's been with us from the beginning. And that appeal to slow down has always been at the core of what the poets are asking us to do. And what the poet, or what the poem is really asking us to do, is not just to slow down, but to pay attention to the words that others are using, to the words that we are using, and to our own thoughts, too. We know how that self-talk works. We know how dangerous that can be when we allow ourselves to fall into that, right? Changes everything how we talk to ourselves. The tradition of wisdom poetry, or sometimes called ecstatic poetry, goes back thousands of years. Of course, the roots of poetry are in song, and the earliest poems we have are anonymous, but that mystical, spiritual quality is just unmistakable. Probably the most well-known of the mystic poets today would be Rumi. Probably all heard of Rumi, best-selling poet of our time. He lived in the 1200s, and here he is selling books in 2024. This popularity is largely due to contemporary translations by Coleman Barks, who transformed Rumi's lengthy, whirling dervish, what they're called ghazal, he would write in the ghazal form, into bite-sized nuggets of wisdom like this. Why do you keep knocking when the door is wide open? Naira Wahid asks that we perceive ourselves not as separate from nature, but as nature. She tells us, if the ocean can calm itself, so can you. You are both salt water mixed with air. So Ocean Vuong is a Vietnamese poet, and his first language was Vietnamese, and he reminds us that not all languages share the same metaphors that English does. And as he began to learn English, he began to notice something really interesting about the English language. And that is that even the most peaceful among us are utilizing war metaphors all the time. If you do something really well, they say you are really kicking butt. You're really killing it. You've got a trigger finger. You live in a battleground state. I've got them written down. Let's see. Knock 'em dead. He's a real lady killer. They closed ranks. All's fair in love and war. Bite the bullet. Feeling under fire. Feel targeted. These are all metaphors that arise from war. He's a time bomb, ticking time bomb. She dropped a bombshell. Frontline workers. Take no prisoners. Target audience. Rally the troops. He was really up in arms. It's an uphill battle. So these are so imbued into our language that we don't even think about them. So that when I ask students to pay attention to their language, this is one of the things I ask them to pay attention to. Because if we're sort of using war metaphors regularly, what does that say about our consciousness? We go around saying that we wish for world peace, right? And here we are using these war metaphors. That's how our conditioning works. And so what I have found is that a lot of our learning, as we get older particularly, is about unlearning, that we're unlearning what we've been sort of conditioned. Mary Oliver, perhaps one of the most beloved of American poets, insists that we silence our inner critics and get on with the business of living our one wild and precious life. She tells us, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. William Blake was another poet of the mystic tradition, and he speaks of impermanence a lot. Here's what he said about that. He who binds himself to a joy does the winged life destroy. He who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. Naomi Shihab Nye expounds on that same theme of letting go She says, before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so that you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. Haiku is perhaps the poetic form most conducive to embodying this power of presence that we're all working on, right? How many here working on being present, more mindful? Well, the poets have been reminding us of this for thousands of years. The Japanese poet Ryokan reframes a misfortune this way. He says, what the thief left behind, the moon at my window. What the thief left behind, the moon at my window. Can't take that away. Issa, another haiku master, won't let us forget that a sense of humor is essential to any wisdom practice. He tells us, mosquito at my ear, does he think I'm deaf? Excuse me. Donna Faulds takes us from our frenetic monkey minds back to our deeper consciousness. She says, forgive yourself. Now is the only time you have to be whole. Now is the sole moment that exists. Perfection is not a prerequisite for anything but pain. Now is the time you have to be whole. Marianne Williamson provides a touch of modern psychology to this idea. She says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are more powerful than we know. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. When we find ourselves utterly distraught, having watched the news, when we look to the face of horrendous cruelty and difficulty in our world, and we say, what can we do? Here's what Judith Hill tells us. Wage peace with your breath. I love how she uses that word wage, which we normally pair with the word war. Wage peace with your breath. Breathe in firemen and rubble and disaster. Breathe out whole buildings and flocks of red-winged blackbirds. Yeah. Derek Walcott tells us, the time will come when with elation you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit, here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself. So there's really no question that anxiety and melancholy and sorrow and loss and isolation, all of these things have been part of the human condition since the beginning. And there's also no question that the arts have been with us all along. I want to say a few words about April, because April is National Poetry Month, and also because April is a really interesting word. As far as we can tell, this word April comes from the Latin aprilis, from which we eventually get aperture, which means to open. This seems about right for National Poetry Month, right? And we all know what it's like when we close. It's sort of like the little ones crumpling up that paper. The heart just crumples up, right? And then to open it up, we get it's a little bit more work to open it up once we, start to close down. What I noticed about the papers that the little ones were crumpling up was that when they opened them up and kind of straightened them out, they were softer. The paper was actually softer. So this word April interests me. T.S. Eliot, however, said this about April. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Well, this is one of those things that we can all kind of relate to, even when we're in a beautiful place. Sometimes if we're not there in our heads and hearts, it doesn't matter where you are, right? Of course, Eliot was writing in the aftermath of World War I, and all the arts were undergoing this radical shift from pastoral, kind of purpley, flowery language to a much more cynical, hardcore, sort of cerebral kind of poetry. Edith St. Vincent Millay was also a postmodernist, and she said of April, she said a lot of things about April, but of course I chose this one to make a point. She said, "It is not enough that yearly down this hill April comes like an idiot, babbling and strewing flowers." Now, I can't help but love that imagery, casting April as a harebrained Pollyanna. I've been called a harebrained Pollyanna, and the narrator is being cast as a spring Scrooge, looking on from up the hill. So that invitation to open that April extends us all is often met with a collaborative cultural smirk. Certainly, cynicism has its place and is in evidence in the age in which we find ourselves today, with our various challenges and wars raging across the globe. Don't worry, I'll find my place. But cynicism by itself, unsalted with wisdom or perspective or a leaning towards beauty, offers nothing of use to anybody. If anything, it only adds to the bitterness and the difficulty. W.H. Auden, another poet, postmodern, was no stranger to his own cynicism or the difficulty of his own age. In one of his most famous poems, he gives us a full litany of the difficulties in the world, long list. And then he suddenly becomes reflective and says, "All I have is a voice to undo the folded lie. There is no such thing as the state, and no one exists alone. Hunger allows no choice to the citizens or the police. We must love one another or die." Pretty radical for a postmodernist. It puts everything in perspective and allows us to return not just to the arts, but to the humanities with which the arts are paired. He finishes this remarkable poem with these exquisite lines. "Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them, of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame." Again, Auden goes back to the individual ways we live our lives. We cannot change the world. We can change ourselves. These lines, coming as they do after a deep, long look into the miseries and the cruelties of the world, have served as a guiding star for me in my life. It is not always easy to keep that affirming flame burning. That difficulty is what another poet, Robert Pinsky, called a worthy difficulty. And he says, I wish you all a worthy difficulty. It's the difficulty that makes it worthy. And that's where we find meaning. That which is easy is not as meaningful. There's an old Chinese proverb, it is better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. So the last year I've been doing a lot of these presentations, and I've been beginning with these lines by Arizona poet Alberto Rios. It's called When Giving is All We Have. He tells us, one river gives its journey to the next. We give because someone gave to us. We give because nobody gave to us. We give because giving has changed us. We give because giving could have changed us. We have been better for it. We have been wounded by it. And then I think I'll close with a few of my own poems. I have to tell you, I was very moved by the service today. Really, really beautiful. So a few words on this unlearning that we're all in the process of doing. And it's called Dear Brother. Dear brother, I too am still learning to unlearn the childhood third-degree burn, the jagged breath, the relative safety of contempt, the rush to batten down the hatches, the need to hoard the book of matches. I too am still learning to unlearn the book that turns to ashes, the lie that serves no purpose, the lie that swears that you are worthless. I too am still learning to unlearn the curse of the certain, to reverse the locked and loaded, to suspend the assumption of the ugly motive. I too am still learning to unlearn the wrought iron word and the rock solid cure. My brother in the mirror of the triggered, in the glass of the imprisoned, in the stories of reflection, are the remnants of revision, are the cousins of correction, are the sages and the saplings, and the burnings and the learnings, are the blessings of the waters, are the curtains slowly parting, are the rivers in their turning, are the ripples of unlearning. So I'll just repeat, the word vulnerable comes from the Greek vulni, to carry a wound gracefully. I saw a little kestrel a couple weeks ago. So this is a poem I wrote to that little kestrel. Little kestrel, you unexpected little minstrel, you quick as a pistol, clear as a bead, and sharp as a needle creature, perched like a verse in a children's book. Here, in the middle of April, I long look at you. It could be said, I become you. And after a while, here in the land of the long look, I'll become the moon, and the velvety page in that children's book, and the knight, and the queen, and even the rook. And after a while, I'm again reminded, although I'm the season, and all kinds of weather, I'm not a raptor. I haven't a body covered in feathers. It's not a blunder. It's not an error. It's not a disaster. It's only the ever-changing weather, making of me today anyway, a strange five-fingered creature, vulnerable to all manner of shift and sway, an upright thing who lays herself down, halfway between an awkward genius and a clown, a fleshy thing of solace and disaster. Little Kestrel, I see me as just another wounded thing, just another humble endeavor, just another change in the weather, in the changing form of an elegy, a mystery song, a silver-haired elder, just another winged thing in the shape of a bent-over storyteller. And I'll finish with this one called Just So You Know. And I want to thank again Pastor Wendy and Catherine and the choir and everybody who welcomed me with such big smiles today. That first song brought tears to my eyes, that welcoming song. I felt very welcome coming in the door today. Just so you know, close to the chest is close to the bone. Just so you know, there's not much growth in your comfort zone. Just so you know, the pen is no mightier than the soul. Just so you know, a guarded heart keeps the song away. Just so you know, the wind carries your words away. Just so you know, your bliss is the sister to your pain. Just so you know, there is no one for whom all is well. The lotus is married to the mud. Godliness has nothing to do with a white glove. Just so you know, to listen deeply is to love. Just so you know, everything is an inside job. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you. I just have a quick announcement as we please rise in body or spirit as we sing a change in our bulletin. Just knowing that we were going to have some very powerful words shared by Wendy and to make us appreciate the power of words. The hymn that I had chosen, alas, it's okay, but it didn't pass muster for what I hoped that we could bring this morning. So instead, we've chosen number 1067. It is a relatively new hymn to our congregation. However, a true gem to find. So if you're willing in your teal hymnal, let's turn to number 1067 and rise in body or spirit and sing Mother Earth, Beloved Garden.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.